The United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, the takeover of Fort Lawton and Discovery Park, came out of the civil rights actions that have been taking place throughout the United States. A lot of younger people who were in colleges, in schools. Some had been part of civil rights actions and activities, protest activities on behalf of both Afro-American black people and Chicanos. And from that, I guess you could say the whole momentum that was being generated in the late 60s came the different Native American or American Indian protest groups. You had National Indian Youth Council, headquartered out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. You had United Native Americans out of the Bay Area. You had Americans Before Columbus, ABC, out of Schurz, Nevada, Pyramid Lake, Nevada. And from these groups came this, and from the colleges came this feeling, that was being generated, that we also had a real strong message. One of the messages was that when Westerners came to this country, they had pushed Indians literally from the East Coast to the West Coast. And as a precedent, we were going to start taking lands from the West and pushing east back, reclaiming these lands. In a sense, out of treaty rights that we have the right to reclaim or to reestablish a claim to lands that were taken under treaty or taken, period. We have first refusal rights when those lands are being given up by the Government Services Administration, when they declare the land surplus, or when they declare an office building surplus, a federal office building. We have a right to stake a claim to some of these materials, some of this land. And so began Alcatraz. A few weeks after that, or a couple months after that, the Muckleshoot Treaty Trek was going on, and it was in Olympia. And it was going on to bring focus to the treaties, the Indian fishing rights, hunting and fishing rights, the Indian treaty rights, period, that were being debated in Olympia. And I came up from California. I was still in the Bay Area. I was still at Alcatraz. I came up and I brought the state car that I had used from Western Washington State University to go down and participate in the invasion of Alcatraz, along with other classmates of mine. We took like a series of state cars, and of course this brought about some some questioning, but Dr. Flora, Jerry Flora, who was the president of Western, he was very sympathetic to what we did, and he just kind of brushed it off. We'll let him work it out when he comes back. So I brought the state cars back, got another one, got a fresh one, and came down to the Muckleshoot Treaty Trek with students from Western. And there we ran into Bernie Whitebear. Bernie had grown up a few miles from where I grew up in eastern Washington on the Colville Indian Reservation. Oh, by the way, I'm Randy Lewis. I'm a member of the Colville tribe, also a board member of United Indians of All Tribes Foundation. Bernie gave me a flyer, and the flyer was for a meeting that was going to be held up here in Seattle at the Filipino Community Center down in the Central District. Yeah, down on, Rainier. It used to be down Rainier and, I forget what there is in the cross street, just in the middle of the block. And Marty Sabonga, who is one of the heads of the Filipino community, he's the one who invited us to use this facility, which was wonderful of them. And it was through this wonderful connection that Bernie had both Indian and Filipino mixed ancestry, that he had some of these connections within Seattle. Bernie had these ties through all the communities, it seemed like. And so we met there, and discussed the actual invasion. Actually, it wasn't there. It was at Kanechatapi, Alaskan Native Services. That was the first meeting. The second meeting was held at the Filipino Community Center, or Filipino Hall. And we discussed the invasion, the occupation of Fort Lawton, which was a deactivated army base of 1,100 acres. And we were going to go in, and the idea to go in and stake a claim to it, much like we did Alcatraz. Unlike Alcatraz, we didn't realize that Fort Lawton was still being occupied by 4,000 MPs. Wrong thing to do. We didn't know that until we got in there. The next morning, on March 6th, the meeting took place on the night of March 5th. The next morning, March 6th, we invaded Fort Lawton. And many people were very unaware of the fact that they just thought it was going to be a romp through the park and stake our claim and have a press statement there. MPs were unleashed, and people were injured. During this period, Jane Fonda had come into town, and she was also there. She went over the fence. We helped her. If you get a chance to talk to Ramona Bennett, it was Ramona Bennett's car that was parked beside the fence that we used as a ladder to get over the fence. And during that period, Ramona's car was tear-gassed inside, outside, which would lead to a whole set of problems later. Like every time you turn the car on, the tear gas would reactivate in the car. And so we had to drive with the windows down and cry our eyes out to wherever we were going. But Jane Fonda went over the fence with the help of some of the invading or occupying native force. And we all got rounded up, herded up, beat up, knocked around, and then thrown into the barracks and charged with felonious trespassing. Okay, there's a word. We all went stomping off to our thesauruses to find out what the hell is felonious rioting, felonious trespassing. And were given expulsion papers. And practically everyone except for a couple people were rounded up. Ella Aquino, the elderly of all the invasion force, Ella and her grandson, she was dragging around with her. They never were captured. They just kind of hid in the blackberry bushes and would appear and disappear and disappear and appear and disappear. And they never caught her. And so she walked out dragging a little teepee at the end when everybody was being expelled out the gate. Right after that, they set up their guards, and concertina wire was strung all along the entrance to the fort. And a week later came another invasion of Fort Lawton. This time, we had with us people from the press, from Italy, from all over, free press, people were in from all over the country. And they were there to help to make sure that what they had heard about the violence to people didn't happen again. And so they came in. We had to come up through the cliff because they had the fort all sealed off. The area they didn't seal off was the bluff.
On the west side, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we came up the cliff. We literally had our backs against the wall at times walking along the seawall. We were just strung out. 90-some of us we were strung out like, individually, not like strung out. And we made it to the bluff, came up the bluff, and hid under the root balls of the madrona trees that were overhanging there until we had figured out what the schedule was of the guard as he would drive by making his rounds. He'd come by about every half hour. And so after he passed, we all climbed up, set up a teepee, had the whole thing. We had drug teepee poles and everything. We had this teepee pole set up. The next time he comes around, he looks at me, he's going, what the hell? There's 100 Indians over there in a teepee drumming and singing. What happened? Then we laughed and cheered. Colonel Palos, on the other hand, wasn't as happy about our presence. He was the acting colonel for Fort Lawton. He came back with the guards. They got off their jeep, they looked out there, and you could see them all trying to appraise what the situation was here. And then they drove off. They came back a little while later, told us that we were all trespassing, and that if we remained, we would be arrested and charged with criminal trespassing on federal grounds. And we all jeered and booed and hollered and hissed and cheered and hooped and hollered, and a few minutes, the time passed. All of a sudden we could hear this boom, 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 boom. And I remember Douglas Remington, who was a Ute Indian from Colorado, or from Utah, or Colorado, Utah. He and I we walked over to this berm, this long ridge that we couldn't see over. And for as far as the eye could see, stretched out along there, were MPs all dressed up in riot gear marching. They looked like Gestapo, with these big shields, these big clear acrylic shields, marching, drumming, marching at us. And we got, oh no, oh Lord. So then they crested the hill and they stood all along, and we were down on this flat, this little green meadow area that looked so beautiful. We figured, well, this is going to be it. This is Wounded Knee all over again. And then they started marching towards us. Trucks started appearing, troop carriers. And Grace Thorpe told everybody, when they get near, just fall down and go limp, and make them carry you into the trucks. She said, it's a lot harder to pick somebody up who's just limp. Don't risk the children or the old people that were there this time. And as they came up, they read us our rights, what rights we had. You have no rights when you're on a military base and you've invaded. You literally have none. You've waived your rights already. But they picked us up and threw us into the trucks. Grace Thorpe just flopped down and she said, I stand over 6 feet tall and it's going to take 8 of you to move me. And it did. She was our role model. We all kind of flopped and turned into jelly. And they put us, this time the media was there and they were capturing. Of course, the media got their cameras taken away. Some of them got their cameras broken. Some of them got they were just throwing the film in the air. But they got arrested. Well, amongst them was a member of the Human Rights Commission who was beaten up. They didn't know he was with the Human Rights Commission, so that added a new twist to what happens. And we were thrown into the stockades again, and again they denied us food, they denied us water, they denied us restrooms, and so somewhere along the line somebody screamed, keep Washington green, and everybody turned around and pissed on the MPs from inside the jail. So that was our one act of civil disobedience that we could pull off. And they discharged us again, they kicked us out again, they gave us our papers of expulsion, we signed our little names or whatever names we wanted to, and they released us right out where the gates are, right out where Discovery Park, where the United Indians is located now. There's the gate there, and that's where we were discharged. And months would pass weeks would pass, and about 1 month from the original invasion, during that period we had set up a tent city in front of the gates in which we manned, and sometimes there'd be 100 people staying out there. in tents and teepees and sleeping bags, sleeping out there. And it was really interesting to see how the city of Seattle reacted to this. A lot of citizens started. I remember Gib Hain, who was one of the Magnolia residents, and the Brits boys. These are non-Indian people. I remember them from all the way back then. The Brits, Pat Brits, their mother and her sons, started delivering food to us. Big, huge, one-pot meals to us. Gib Hain, who owned the Scarlet Tree up on I think it's on Roosevelt, up there somewhere, north of the University District.
It burned down.
Did it really?
Oh, well, I guess about a summer ago. Yeah, I used to, went to high school with a bunch of girls who worked in there. Yeah.
He started sending food packages over. Hewitt's Catering, from Bill Hewitt, who owns the Blake Island. He started sending over chafing dishes full of food every day to support us. People were calling, Magnolia citizens were calling and asking the press. Can we turn this off just a second? We had a lot of community support from people we didn't even know, and that was the majority. I mean, that was the story of United Indians. We had a lot of people that we didn't know who came out very strongly in support of us. We had a lot of people that we didn't know who hated us, and a lot of them were Lawtonwood Magnolia citizens. Other Magnolia citizens, they came over and they started stopping by and asking if we needed any day labor, because they would hire us and pay us. That way we would have money as well. And it was really interesting. It was a real cross-section of humanity that came by. Some people came by to throw rocks and bottles at us as we, at nighttime. That was okay. We always had fires going, and we could always throw fire back at them, which we did. Once when there was a huge Redbone concert down here at the Eagles to raise money for us, everybody abandoned the fort and forgot that, hey, some people have got to man the fort out there. And myself. I was the only person out there for a while. And Lonnie Reyes came by, and Bernie's brother, and there were a couple of people who finally showed up out there to reinforce me, and because people were getting really wicked. They were going by and they were throwing things. And I thought, well, it won't be long before the next time. So the next time they came by, I had a shovel full of hot coals from the fire, and I just shoveled it into their car as they went by. That ended that. Then Lonnie and, I forget who was with Lonnie. Maybe it was his wife Joyce who showed up, and they supported me. And then pretty soon there was a handful of us who were there. And that's the type of things that were happening, that were being generated by this. And in the meantime, we had to decide whether we were going to go or come or go, whether we were going to just pack up and call it quits. And so finally we met again at the Filipino Community Center and decided that I think it was April 6th or April 9th. April 9th, we decided to call it quits. We would take down Resurrection City there, Tent City, and bid farewell to Colonel Palos. And we did. We got everything taken down, and Frank White Buffalo Man, this old Sioux medicine man who lived here in the area, he told the press that there would come a sign from the sky that day. And so everybody poo-pooed him, of course. And Frank was out there when we were meeting with Colonel Palos, and from up in the sky, Frank had hired a skyrider. And it says, "Surrender Colonel Palos, or Surrender Fort Lawton. It was out of the, straight out of the Wizard of Oz. Surrender, Dorothy. And at that moment, Bernie's talking to Colonel Palos, and he said, we're sorry to have caused you so much, pain and suffering or whatever. And so all we can say is, attack! And everybody went running through the forts again. And Colonel Palos is standing there as all these Indians are running by him, creating mayhem once again in the fort. Final time. Final beating. Worst beating. And again, 90-some people were ushered out of the fort, kicked out, booted out, and Colonel Palos was made the butt of jokes in newspapers across the country. This is being carried across the country. The news media is just having a heyday with this. And the pressure on Colonel Palos, I'm sure, was insurmountable for him to, take care of these, take care of these Indians. And so, right after that, we cleaned up, we disbanded from the fort, and we left. And we had essentially done what we needed to do there, and that was bring focus and bring attention. Now became the war of words that would happen in City Hall, City Council, State Legislature. Bernie and the United Indians of all tribes, which had been founded out of this, now work to secure a portion of Fort Lawton. And 2 years later, 2 years later, it happened. 3 years later, we got that little parcel of land, 20 acres of land out there. The first step in the buildings of a dream. So, in a sense, that's how Fort Lawton, that's how United Indians began.